President Trump just got finished speaking, deploying the National Guard to, quote unquote, reestablish law. What that looks like is the fact that they've been experiencing a big homeless crisis in Washington, D.C., as the rest of the country has as well, by the way. I mean, any major city you've probably been in, you have seen it, but D.C. maybe more than ever. Atlanta's having these problems. Nashville's having these problems. Obviously, Southern California, big issues. And Northern California, we know all of the issues that are coming. And he's saying, look, we are going to clean this up, clean up the streets, give these people the help they need. And that, to me, I hope doesn't get lost in the shuffle here. Is we're not talking about just moving people out. Because I saw that a bit when I was in Hollywood last time, which you could tell they kind of cleaned up Hollywood Boulevard, but just sort of pushed them, to an area where it's like, well, just get them a mile out of the tourist areas and no one will ever know. It seems like this tactic they're going to do is to hopefully get them into housing, obviously, in those kind of situations, fed, and really start hopefully some kind of real work that can be done for these people.
But it's also looking at the crime crisis that is there. That is, some stems from that, but also just because it is a major city and what we've seen in the past few years, especially, Jordan, we've seen the leadership of these cities, normally very Democrat-heavy leadership. They are not going after the criminals. They are deciding to, in some cases, become sanctuary cities. And what the president is doing here, as he says, this is our nation's capital, this is the seat of government, we can't have this reckless crime that's going forward, and even points to the statistics of how bad it's gotten in our nation's capital. And so he's doing what he has the power to do under the law, and that is use the federal government, use federal resources to try and clean this up.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the murder rates. So Washington, D.C. is now one of the most dangerous places in the world, and it's one of the smaller capitals. I mean, so when you look at Washington, D.C.'s murder rate in 2024, they're 27.54, so almost 28 murders per 100,000 people. Compare that to a place like Bogota, Colombia. That it's 15 per 100,000. Mexico City is 10. Islamabad, Pakistan, 9. Lima, Peru, 7. Paris, 1.6. London, 1.1.
Washington, D.C., incredibly strict on laws, on gun laws. And
27 murders per 100,000
Yeah, that's
people.
terrible. Well, hopefully, this sets a new precedent moving forward of what these cities can do. Because, look, you even had Bowser come in and say, look, I think this is within his means. Now we have to see a complete turnaround from starting in Washington, D.C., which is under the president's control, and move, hopefully, all the way through the country that needs this right now.
That's right, Logan. And as you mentioned, there is kind of two issues to this here, but a lot of the crime is also happening from younger individuals, teenage gangs that are running through the city. You're seeing congressional staffers murdered. You're seeing the former Doge employee beaten up trying to stop a carjacking. And you saw the murder of those two diplomats just because they were Jewish just a few months back. And those are some of the highlighted stories. But what is also happening, and they point this out, is that, one, how high that murder rate is. It's higher than many other capitals of cities and countries that you would think of as not as developed as the United States, that have a lot more lawlessness. But then you also look at the homicide rate we talked about, but it also experiences the nation's highest vehicle theft rate, and it is over 3 times the national average. You're 3 times more likely than the national average to get a vehicle stolen in D.C. There's also other crime is more than 20% up over the rest of the nation. So what the president's doing now is he's invoking Section 740 of the D.C. Home Rule Act, which set up the D.C. Code, and that allows the president of the United States, when he determines that special conditions for an emergency nature exist, which require the use of the Metropolitan Police Force for federal purposes, he may direct the mayor to provide him, and the mayor shall provide such services for the Metropolitan Police Force as the president may deem necessary and appropriate. And this has, Jordan, a maximum of 30 days without a resolution by Congress. It would have to be from both the House and the Senate. But the president can do this. It is within the authority. And D.C. is a unique place because it is a federal city. It's not a state. It's a district. And a lot of these rules actually only came into being in the 70s. Like, this wasn't the entire history before that. It was mostly controlled by the federal government.
Yeah, if you're in a big city, I mean, even small towns, you've got police and sheriffs. You've got these kind of dual police forces, and you've got highway patrol, things like that. In D.C., I mean, different buildings of the federal government have their own police force. There's a Supreme Court police, so different branches of government have their own police force. There's the Capitol Hill Police for the congressional police. There's, of course, the Secret Service, and they have a policing division for the executive branch. So you've got all these different police services and security services. On top of that, you have Metro Police. You have police and then different areas of the city. And unfortunately, in Washington, D.C., there's at least two D.C.s. There's the D.C. that you see when you go on your trip. And you have to remember, this is a giant city, and you're seeing about 3% of it when you go on your school trip. And the rest of the city is been rough historically. And so these murder rates, I think they speak for themselves. The fact that it's double the amount of places like in places like Bogota, Colombia, have half the murder rate of Washington, D.C. It's unacceptable in the United States of America. It's why I don't think there is much pushback from D.C. leaders, because they've probably used all the resources they can. The federal government has a lot more resources, and we don't want the world coming to Washington, D.C., and everyone is living in tents.
Even during that press conference, President Trump was saying, with discussions, like there were people saying, we need more police in D.C. to be able to do this. And he's like, well, how many police do you have? And they said over 3,000. And he said, you don't need more police. You have an army. Especially when you take that within all the Capitol Hill Police, the Supreme Court Police, the Park Police. When you're talking about just Metro Police, he's saying you have over 3,000. You're just not doing it right. And that's kind of the whole point, is that if the priorities are wrong, if the leadership is focusing on the wrong things, you can even take that example back to Chicago.
They've scared the police forces, too.
Right.
To doing their jobs.
That's true.
Yeah.
Most of these major
3,000
cities...
is a lot, but 3,000 isn't like an insane number to me for Washington, D.C.
Well, exactly. But his point was that you don't need more.
Yeah.
You just need to be doing the correct work and focusing on the right things to make the city safe. And for too long in these very liberal cities in this country, they are focusing on the wrong things, the wrong priorities.
This is not some short-term necessary solution. This is a power the president has. This is our capital city, and it could also be used as an example. And I think that's what the president is hoping for. Is look what we can do in a city if we focus on the bad actors and actually use the police force in the right way, take the politics out of it. A lot of these cities, people that are committing violent crimes are getting out the same day. They're being booked and released the same day because there is nowhere to keep them.